All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you for showing up on my Morsels talk at Nimbus. And I was a postdoc at Nimbus previously. So for me, it's like I'm coming back. And right now, it's kind of like a report of what I have done in my new area when I moved to Texas Christian University. So this is one of the projects I'm currently working on. It's really preliminary analysis. So you will see, really want to hear your thoughts about the idea and everything maybe I need to do in future and make it more complete. So I'm really interested in oncology, like their terror to death, like how they fear about the death caused by infection. Present today. Right. So we already have a lot of studies indicate that the human activities can largely influence system dynamics. So we probably already know tons of the research about, how like the terrestrial ecology being influenced by human behaviors, like for the agriculture, or how the marine ecology being affected by human behavior, like fishing, or they are building up the protected areas there. And then similar thing that can happen in the disease ecology as well. So the human behavior can also influence the dynamics of those infectious diseases, especially right now when we are living in this changing world in the presence of varieties of those bacteria, viruses, etc. So one of the big influence from the human part is how the human gonna control those disease. Take the vector-borne disease as example. That's how the human can control the vector population and further influence the disease levels in the system. And this process actually also being a feedback is not just how the human influence the disease dynamics, also have how these disease levels interact with the control effect, like how they influence how strong the people control the vector population. And we can imagine if in the system, there are really high level disease, people probably want to control the vector more. For example, if they use a pesticide to kill the vector like a mosquito, they probably will kill them more stronger if you realize the disease levels are higher. Whereas if you don't have too much disease in your system, you're probably gonna lower down your control efforts. So there is like a feedback between this human behavior and the disease levels in the system. So that's what I've been saying for this vector-borne disease is a perfect model system for me, since I'm really interested in working at this interface among human behaviors, disease ecology, and disease epidemiology. And all those three parts, they can change over time. In the previous study, most of them, they focus on like a disease part and how the, for example, how the disease epidemiology change with those control effort from the human aspect. But they can fix the human control level and then to deal with like study the disease epidemiology dynamics. But for me, I'm interested in if this human control also have this feedback loop, like how they can be modified by this disease levels in the system. So in that way, this control effort, this behavior is also changing with time. And for this changing, there could be multiple factors they can influence the dynamics of these human behaviors. For example, how the death cases in this system can influence how they change their control behavior. And also, I'm particularly interested in this, how the human psychology part, they can influence their control behavior in this system. So before we go to the detail of the model, I want to sort of like talk about what type of a psychological processes they may particularly influence their control effort on the vector population. For example, if they are more scared to the death, which was caused by the infectious disease, or they are less scared. This is one factor. Or if do they really want to take the risk for the disease, like the infection, or they are more like a not really into take any risk. And also whether there are psychological processes, they want to take action, even they have a certain specific type of affair there, whether they want to take action or no. So all those psychological processes, they could influence these control behavior. Their might influence the action, our might influence our action. So in this study, I particularly focus on the first one and how they scared to death caused by the disease can influence their control effort and further influence their disease dynamics in the system. Okay, so for these, first I want to define this terror to death. This more usually be used by psychologists. It's describe how much fear a person they can develop, and as certain given numbers of the death cases, and that's further influence their control actions they want to take at different levels. So basically, if they are more scared at a given levels of the death cases, they probably take more control, give a more control effort on the vector population, like basically reduction. So this is how this terror to death play a role in these death cases and the control effort feedback. And also, once I observed this terror to death, I also realized this is a psychological process. Usually it could change with time, and it can also vary among different people. Maybe some people, they are more fair for the deaths versus another. And some people, they just so brave. They don't really care whether they die from infectious disease, which we actually observed during COVID outbreak even. So given all those, and what I really want to model this terror to death dynamics, I basically want to model two parts, and I can treat this as assumption for my model. So I assume there are terror to death, like the people are more scared to those deaths when they know those disease information. For example, if they read a newspaper or hear like a radio, the government reports the death toll. When they hear those, their terror to the death will be more triggered. That is the start of this, I call them a TTD, or terror to death. And also, based on my observation, this terror to death usually are more stronger at the beginning when they get this disease information, but they can slowly just decay with time goes by. Like they're probably gonna control mosquito more. For example, if like Zika virus, like this vector-borne disease, once we know more people die from it, at the beginning, people probably take this control action more seriously. They started to kill mosquito more, but with time goes by, their action may slowly just decrease. And so I also wanted this terror to death to reflect this decrease pattern in the model. So given those two assumptions, and I found that there is one curve, it's a forgetting curve, which is commonly used by a lot of psychologists. There are Ebbinghaus forgetting curve, hope I pronounce it okay, and they can, seems pretty good to describe this terror to death dynamics, which I'm gonna use it in my model system. So this function determined by two parameters, theta and tau. So the theta, I call them initial terror, is when the time equals to 0, how much terror this person can have. So we see this parameter can reflect the variations of the people, dog calling. Some of them, they may be more scared to the death, whereas others are less scared. This can be reflected by this parameter theta. And another parameter is terror decay rate. So if you look at this curve on the right, and this rate is decreasing. So with time goes by, their terror to death probably gonna decrease a little bit. And then I use this tau to really indicate the rate. And like this slope of every part of this curve, and they being indicated by this parameter tau. So if people have a less terra decay, they will have a smaller tau. Basically, if you have a higher numbers for the tau, their terra decay will be more stronger. That means very quickly, maybe after a couple of days, they just stop controlling those vector population that's that much. So they just have this decay rate very fast. So this is the generally I want a model added into the system for the parts. And I particularly want to answer these 3 research questions right now. For this part of the work, I want to know how this initial taro, these parameters C that can influence disease dynamics, and what about the other parameter terra decay? And also how both of these 2 factors, initial taro and the terra decay, can simultaneously influence this population or this disease level dynamics in the system. So before I goes into any of those research questions, definitely introduce the model first. As a modeler, and a lot of people see Nimbus too. So let's introduce the model first. So I use a discrete version, but here the similar idea. These 4 equations represent the population change in the human, like the human part dynamics. The SH is a susceptible human, IH is infected human, and RH is recovered human, and DH is the death of the human. So basically the dynamics is we have a susceptible human at the beginning, and once they contact the affected mosquito IM, they became infected. And once they became infected, they have 2 rows to go. They either later on recovered with the RH, and or they lead to die. And all the susceptible, affected, and the recovered people, they also have this constant natural mortality rate, mu h. And for the birth rate of the population, here I only assumed it's coming into this system through this susceptible people. And the second piece of the model is coming from the vector population change. Here I specifically use mosquito as example. So SM is susceptible mosquito, and IM is infected mosquito. So the mosquito became like a susceptible, and then they will contact the infected people. If they go and get the blood meal of the people they have disease, and they became an infected mosquito. And for both of these 2 parts, they also have the input, like how the mosquito population do. They have their increase, like the egg laying. I use this epsilon m to represent it. So this equation I didn't write out explicitly, but this is more like a logistic growth. So all the whole population of this mosquito, they can produce eggs, and then they goes to this susceptible mosquito. But the total numbers of the mosquito are being limited, bounded under the carrying capacity K. And all these 2 parts, they also experience the natural mortality rate is mu m, and also have a changing mortality part coming from this control from the human behavior. So this control part is the last equation, and we can see this is the terror to death, how this psychological process being included in this model. Okay, so now armed with this model, and I will explore all the 3 questions one by one in the following. So for the initial terror influence, what I have done is I first control the terror decay, tau equal to 0. So basically there is no decay. Once they decide to kill mosquito at a certain level, they just hold on a long time. They don't decay with the time. And I set up this CETA, initial terror, as 3 different levels, and indicated by these 3 type of the lines. So basically we see with time goes by, those control definitely increase gradually. And especially the increase when you have a larger initial terror, that makes sense because you are more scared. You're supposed to control those mosquito population more stronger. So we see those lines into the direction, there's an increasing direction from this solid black to dashed and to the dotted line with the increase of the theta, this parameter. And similarly, once you control the vector population more and you end up decrease the disease outbreak. So the infected human, they shrink their number, like the magnitude and the time of the disease outbreak, both are being reduced in this case. So that's what I expect to see. And also for the death cases, which I didn't show it here, once you have a less infection, also the people they die in the system decrease as well. And so the second part, let's move to the second part to test the terror decay's influence to the disease dynamics. So this time I do have this initial terror theta set up like 0.01. And then the solid black line there is no decay. So it's like a control, it's more like a control. We can see how this tau influence dynamics. And then I have another two levels with tau equals to 0.1 and 0.2. And then I do the simulation. This time, I basically see with time goes by, if it's zero, when tau equal to zero, that means your initial terror is 0.01, it hold on for a long time. There is no decay, and you add up have this really tall curve, which I'm pointed out for you now. And then once you increase a little bit about the tau, and there is a very dramatic decrease of those control effort. And then so you see the dashed line, and it's very little tiny dotted line. You can see there is almost zero. So with the increase of the tau and the control effort is almost close to the case where there is no control action at all, and which I indicated with this red curve. So we can see when tau equal to 0.02, it's almost there is the system feel like there is no control at all. And another interesting I observe is the curve for this control effort, they became like a bell shape. So they first increase and later on they decrease. So that's the two things I observe. And next, I want to see under these three levels of a control effort and how the disease level can change. And then I see when you have no decay in your system, obviously your control effort is the highest, you have a very small disease outbreak underneath. This is a solid black curve right here. When you increase this tau, and it will dramatically, you reduce your control effort, the disease level will goes up. And no matter the magnitude or the time, how long it lasts, they both increase. And then once your tau equals to 0.02, that level, they almost goes to this red curve. That's where the system without any control effort. So basically just the regular vector disease model without any human control aspects. And I see there is some dent in this disease outbreak curve. And I think this is coming from this bell shape because your control effort is not hold consistent like one level. Sometimes it goes up faster and then sometimes they drop down. That make this infected disease, like this disease outbreak also somehow like have some dented shape. And sometimes they goes up faster, but then it slow down. And then another area they can goes up but they slow down a little bit. So that's how the bell-shaped control curve influences the shape of the disease curve. But in general, we see the larger terral decay, they can significantly reduce this control magnitude. They can also make the disease last longer. Okay, and the last thing I have done is I just change both parameters simultaneously and see whether there is interact influence between these two parameters. I set up the combinations of 4 levels of this theta and the tau. And you see from the solid line and to dashed dot and even dash dotted line, I have the theta, the initial terral gradually increase, have their terral decay gradually decrease. So this is as what I expect to see. I see those control efforts, they definitely increase with the increase of this initial terral. But they also increase if you have a less terral decay. And then the initial terral, if we compare the solid black line and the dashed line, we'll see the initial terral, they can mainly increase the control effort by increase the magnitude of this control effort. But once I have this terral decay here, and then even the time how this control should last is also being influenced. So the terral decay can extend this control time. So you can see the top 2 curves, they really have a longer time for this control effort, last longer time too. And then I want to see how these kind of like a similar thing, the control effort, and can produce the corresponding disease outbreak. So if I observe this solid black light, which is like really tall and really short term time, and this disease outbreak is where it's more like a control. And then if we compare this disease outbreak with the other two, either have a larger initial terral, which is the dashed line, or have a smaller terral decay, this dotted line and being pointed out. And we see either increasing initial terral or decrease the terral decay. They will decrease the magnitude of the disease outbreak. You can see the peak, they are really reduced. And also they can elongate the infection. So the disease outbreak lasts longer. And for the case, if you have, for the control case, the disease will dies out around like a 700 or so. And then, but for the other 2 cases, you either increase the initial terral or decrease the terral decay. They will last really long. It's even past like 1500 days. But we do see the lowest one, the dashed dotted line here, is indicated when I change both initial terral and the terral decay. So I make this initial terral larger and the terral decay lower. And we observe, if we compare the solid black light, which is this one I'm pointed out, with the lowest one, and the disease outbreak is dramatically decreased. No matter the magnitude or the time of the outbreak, they can both be reduced. And so from there, I got the conclusion is if we can increase the initial terral and decrease the terral decay at the same time, that seems more effectively can reduce the disease levels. That's really come to these applications for my results. As if we really want to, for example, tell the local government can design some effective control strategy, and we probably can suggest them how they manipulate the human's initial terror reaction. For example, they can carry out some education programs and make sure they understand how the infectious disease influence our life. So for those ones, they probably are not really learned before. They learn how the thing works and how they are dangerous for our life. They probably will develop they're more scared, like higher fear level, and then they can take their control action stronger. And at the same time, probably what they can do is like they can prevent the terror decay by reinforce this disease information. Like we do know if sometimes the people get tired, if they know, oh, this is the death level at a certain time, and then the local government probably occasionally or periodically use the social media, can tell them, oh, this is another death toll, you have to pay attention again. Just drive them attention so their control behavior and their psychologically the terror to death can also be reinforced. So this can offset the terror decay's influence. So both way they can do at the same time, and then they can achieve the better control for the infectious disease. So that's model application. And I have some future work here because this is just a very preliminary thing I have done. What I want to do for this project, for next step is I want to check whether the repetitive disease information, like what I mentioned, if they periodically through the social media tell them this disease information, whether they can produce some periodic, they probably can lead to some periodic terror to death psychological process, and whether that periodic terror to death can introduce more disease, how that influences the disease outbreak. Maybe they can introduce the cyclins to the disease. That could be very interesting. This can be checked. And also I wonder, like, because this work can be used to explain why the people at different areas, maybe in future, they can react differently to the infectious disease. Like some policy may apply better in certain area than others, and not just about the terror to death. And there are some other things related to people's personality, for example. Like I mentioned previously, maybe they are risk adverse or they're like the opposite. So some other psychological process I want extended to better understand those policy, how they can apply it in different areas. Yeah, and also include some personality, like maybe the survey analysis from the people, for the people from the different areas that can be done by some psychological survey data, and can add it up, and then to better have a understanding of how our psychology influence the disease dynamics and what we can do in future and how we can maybe apply those disease control strategy better. So that's what I want to present today. And thank you for listening. If you have any questions, let me know. I think I have a lot of noise here, but I will try my best.